The galaxy had always been a place of infinite wonders, yet there were also shadows lurking in the corners where light could barely reach. One such shadow had spread across the stars, casting a chill over countless civilizations. The Xyrith Empire, led by the ruthless Empress Gera, was known for its unyielding power, its military might, and its ability to bring entire planets to their knees. The Empress was feared by all, and her reputation was as sharp as the weapons she wielded. It was said that the Xyrith Empire had never known defeat. With vast fleets that could obliterate entire fleets and technologies far beyond the reach of most galactic species, Empress Gera ruled with an iron fist. She was a being of immense power, her knowledge of ancient technologies and intergalactic warfare unmatched. Her cold gaze could freeze even the most courageous of hearts. On the distant world of Terra, a human planet that was far from the core of the galaxy, there was a growing sense of fear. Once considered insignificant, humanity had begun to rise. They had formed alliances with various other species, building a coalition known as the Intergalactic Alliance. Their advances in technology were slow but steady, and their determination was unmatched. The humans had fought battles, faced adversity, and won victories, though none had come close to the might of the Xyrith Empire. The Empress's forces were overwhelming, and the humans knew they were on the brink of being crushed under her heel. Despite this, there was hope. There was always hope. General Ava Collins, a woman of sharp intelligence and fierce determination, stood at the helm of humanity's resistance. She was not a warrior by birth, but had earned her place among the stars by proving her brilliance in strategy and tactics. Under her command, humanity had become a force to be reckoned with. She had united fractured groups of people, each with their own interests and objectives, and forged them into a formidable fighting force. The humans had become allies with many species who sought to rid the galaxy of the Xyrith Empire's oppression. And for the first time, the Empress's power seemed threatened. But the Empress was not one to be defeated so easily. In the deepest corners of space, hidden from the prying eyes of the Alliance, Empress Gera made preparations for the final strike. Her fleets were ready, and the Voidbringer, the most fearsome weapon in the galaxy, was prepared for deployment. It was said to be able to tear through entire star systems, wiping away entire populations in a matter of hours. The Voidbringer was not merely a ship. It was an embodiment of the Empress's will, and it was poised to obliterate everything in its path. On Terra, in the heart of a bustling metropolis, Jonas Gray was a man who had never intended to be part of this galactic war. He was just an ordinary civilian, a man who worked as an engineer for the Alliance's engineering corps, designing ships and weapons for the military. Jonas was not a fighter. He was not a general. He was just a man trying to live his life in the chaos of a universe that had been set aflame by conflict. Yet, like so many others, he had been drawn into the war against his will. Jonas's life had changed forever the day the Xyrith Empire launched its first full-scale attack on Terra. The humans had been caught off guard. Empress Gera's forces descended like a swarm of locusts, overwhelming the planet's defenses. Cities fell, the skies were filled with explosions, and the world seemed to be on the brink of complete destruction. It was in the chaos of that first attack that Jonas found himself face to face with something that would change his life forever. He had been working in a civilian sector of the city when the first wave of attacks hit. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and buildings crumbled around him. The sky was alight with the deadly streaks of laser fire as the Xyrith forces unleashed their fury. Panic spread like wildfire, and the streets were filled with desperate people running for cover. Jonas had only one instinct: to survive. He had grabbed a few tools from his workshop, just in case, and fled into the chaos. Along with a few other civilians, Jonas took shelter in an old underground bunker, a remnant of the old days, when the planet was still trying to build up its defenses. As the hours passed, the sounds of war raged above them. The roar of battle echoed in the distance, but down below, there was silence. It was as if the world had ceased to exist above the surface. But in that silence, Jonas had felt something stir, a strange sensation, as though the very earth beneath him was alive. His fingers had brushed against something cold, hidden among the rubble. He had pulled away the debris to reveal a strange device, a relic from a time long past. The device was small but heavy, shaped like a crystal but unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface was smooth and pulsing with an eerie, otherworldly glow. At first, Jonas had thought it was a piece of debris left behind by the chaos. But as his hands made contact with it, something extraordinary happened. A surge of energy shot through him, rushing up his arms and into his chest. His heart raced and his mind was filled with visions. Visions of distant stars, of alien technologies, and of power beyond comprehension. It was as if the device had unlocked something deep within him, something he had never known existed. Jonas had no idea what it was, this strange force that had awakened inside him. But he knew one thing. The world around him had just changed. And not just for him, but for everyone. The war that had seemed so far away, the conflict that had seemed so distant, had now become something personal. Empress Shera, the woman who had held the galaxy in her grasp for so long, had unknowingly awakened a force that could rival her own. Jonas was not just a civilian anymore. He was no longer just an engineer. The device he had discovered had changed him in ways he could not understand. But it was clear now. He was part of something much bigger. As the hours passed, Jonas tried to make sense of what had happened. He couldn't explain the visions or the strange power that had surged through him, but he knew it was something important. In the midst of a war that threatened to consume everything, Jonas Gray had just become a key player in the fate of the galaxy, and he had no idea what to do with it. Outside, the war raged on. The Xyrath Empire's forces were closing in, and soon, the last line of defense would fall. The civilians who had taken shelter in the bunker with Jonas were frightened. But Jonas was different. He was now something more. He didn't know what exactly that meant, but he knew one thing for sure. Something was about to change. The fate of the galaxy was no longer solely in the hands of the Empress. It was in his hands now. Jonas woke up in a cold sweat. The strange sensation from the device he had touched in the underground bunker still lingered in his mind. He couldn't shake the images that had flooded his thoughts, the stars, the alien technologies, the feeling of raw power coursing through his veins. He had no idea what had happened or what it meant, but deep down, he knew it was important. It wasn't just a freak accident. This was something far more significant. The universe, it seemed, had just chosen him for something. He rubbed his temples, trying to clear the haze in his head. The panic from the previous day still echoed in his body. The war was everywhere now, impossible to ignore. The Xyrath Empire had attacked Terra, and the brutal destruction had only just begun. The humans had never expected to face the full might of the Empire so soon. The Xyrath Empire's ships had dropped from the sky like meteors, firing their deadly beams of destruction. It felt as though the entire world was teetering on the edge of extinction. But what could one man do? What could Jonas Gray, a simple engineer, possibly do to change anything? He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a leader. He was just a man who had been thrust into a war that was bigger than anything he could have imagined. He glanced down at his hands. They felt different somehow. Not physically, but inside. He could feel a deep pulse of energy that was new, strange, and terrifying. He had tried to tell himself that it was all a trick, a result of stress or fear, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. The device he had discovered in the bunker wasn't just a piece of ancient technology. It had changed him in a way he didn't understand. It was as if it had unlocked something deep inside him, something dormant, waiting to be awakened. And now, that power was his to control, or at least, that was what he hoped. As he sat up, he heard the distant rumble of explosions above. The war was still raging, and he couldn't hide from it. No one could. It was coming for them all, and there was nowhere to run. Jonas knew he couldn't just stay in the bunker forever. He had to do something. He had to figure out what this power was, how to use it, and, most importantly, how to stop the Xyrath Empire before it was too late. He left the bunker, stepping into the chaotic streets of the city. The once bustling metropolis had turned into a war zone. Buildings lay in ruins, their skeletal remains rising like gravestones. The sky was filled with smoke and fire, and the distant sound of artillery fire filled the air. There were people running, screaming, trying to find safety, but it was clear safety was a distant dream. The Xyrath Empire had come, and it was not leaving until Terra was nothing but dust. Jonas didn't know where to go, but he knew he couldn't stay there. The streets were clogged with panicked civilians, soldiers trying to maintain some order, and the occasional Xyrath soldier towering over them all with their heavy armor. The Empire's foot soldiers were merciless, marching through the streets and cutting down anyone in their path. He knew he had to find shelter, somewhere out of sight, somewhere to think and figure out his next move. He ducked into an alley and made his way toward a small warehouse that looked abandoned. It wasn't much, but it would do. It was better than nothing. Inside the warehouse, Jonas found a few people huddled together, the fear in their eyes clear. They looked at him as if they weren't sure whether he was a threat or an ally. He didn't blame them. The world had changed overnight, and no one knew who to trust anymore.
"Are you one of the soldiers?" a woman asked, her voice trembling.
She was holding a child close to her chest, trying to shield them from the chaos outside. Jonas shook his head. "I'm not a soldier. I'm just trying to survive." The woman eyed him carefully, then nodded, stepping back to allow him in. He found a spot near the corner and sat down, taking a deep breath. He needed time to think, to figure out what to do. But the truth was, he had no idea. The device had given him power, yes, but he didn't know how to control it, let alone how to use it against the Empire. His mind raced with possibilities, but they all seemed far-fetched. How could he, one man, stand against an entire empire? It didn't make sense, but then he remembered the visions, the technology, the power, the feeling of control. It had felt real, not like some dream or hallucination. It was as if the device had awakened something within him, something ancient. Maybe this power wasn't just about him. Maybe it was the key to turning the tide of the war. He couldn't afford to doubt himself now. The future of his world depended on him. Jonas took a deep breath and stood up. "I have to find General Collins," he muttered to himself. General Eva Collins was the leader of the Intergalactic Alliance's military forces, and she was humanity's best hope for survival. If anyone could figure out what he was dealing with, it was her. He turned to the group of civilians. "Stay here," he told them. "Keep your heads down and stay safe. I'll be back." The woman nodded, clutching her child tighter as Jonas made his way back to the streets. He had no idea where General Collins was, but he knew he couldn't waste time. Every moment counted. The Xyrath Empire wouldn't wait, and neither could he. Jonas's search for General Collins led him through the ruined streets, past the remnants of buildings that had once been bustling centers of commerce and life. Now, they were nothing more than tombs, their empty shells a silent testament to the devastation caused by the Empire. The smell of smoke filled the air, and the sounds of war were ever present. Explosions, screams, the hum of laser fire. Every sound was a reminder that the world was falling apart. As he walked, Jonas couldn't help but notice the changes in him. His mind felt sharper, clearer. He could feel the energy inside him pulsing like a second heartbeat, guiding him forward. It was as if the device had become part of him, its power flowing through his veins. He could sense things he hadn't been able to before. He could hear the faint hum of energy fields in the air, could see the patterns of the destruction around him. It was as if the world had opened up to him in a way he couldn't explain. And then he saw her. General Eva Collins stood in the midst of a group of soldiers, barking orders as she coordinated the defense. She was a tall woman with sharp features, her face hardened by years of combat. Her eyes, however, were filled with determination. Nothing would stop her from protecting humanity, no matter the cost. Jonas hesitated for a moment before walking toward her. She saw him approaching, and her expression softened slightly, though there was still a trace of suspicion in her eyes. She didn't know him, and she didn't trust easily. But in the chaos of the war, trust was a luxury most couldn't afford. "What do you need?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Jonas took a deep breath. "I need to talk to you."
"It's important. It's about the war."
"About the Xyrith Empire." Eva looked him over, her gaze narrowing slightly. "We don't have time for games, soldier."
"If this is some kind of distraction, it's not a distraction," Jonas interrupted, his voice more confident now. "I found something.
A device. It's divine. Changed me. I don't know what it is, but it's powerful. It's ancient, and I think it's the key to stopping the Empire." Ava studied him carefully. "Ancient?" She raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me that some relic is going to stop an empire that's been around for thousands of years?" Jonas nodded. "I don't know how or why, but I think it's our only chance. Please, I need your help." For a moment, Eva didn't say anything. She simply stared at him, as if trying to read him, to figure out if he was telling the truth. Finally, she nodded.
"Let's find out what this device is and see if it can actually do what you say. But if this is some kind of trick, it's not," Jonas replied, shaking his head.
"I swear." The war on Terra had reached a critical point. Every day, the Xyrith Empire's forces grew stronger, pushing deeper into human territory. The destruction was everywhere, and it felt as if humanity's last hope was fading with each passing hour. But Jonas Gray, a man who had never asked for this responsibility, was now standing at the heart of a revolution. The strange power he had discovered had begun to change him, and with General Eva Collins by his side, he knew that humanity's future depended on their success. The command center, a fortified bunker beneath the city, was buzzing with activity. The air was thick with tension as soldiers and officers moved with purpose, their faces grim but determined. The resistance had been gathering in secret, planning counterattacks against the Xyrith Empire. But now, more than ever, they needed answers. The device Jonas had found, this strange relic, had somehow linked him to something far older, something that could give them the edge they so desperately needed. Jonas walked into the room, his mind still racing from the conversation with General Collins. Eva had agreed to help him understand what was happening, though she had made it clear that she wasn't willing to blindly trust in some ancient artifact without seeing results. The resistance couldn't afford to waste time, and Jonas understood that. They were running out of options. General Collins stood in the middle of the room, speaking to a group of officers gathered around a table. Their conversation paused when Jonas entered. She gave him a nod of acknowledgement before turning back to her team. The room quieted, and Eva's voice filled the space. "We don't have much time," she said, her tone sharp and commanding. "The Empire's pushing forward, and our forces are stretched thin. If we don't do something soon, we risk losing everything. I need you all to stay focused." Jonas couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. This was real. There was no turning back. The fate of Terra, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested in their hands. Eva turned to him, and the room fell silent again. Her eyes studied him closely, waiting for an explanation. Jonas stepped forward, his palms sweating. He had no idea how he was supposed to convince these battle-hardened soldiers that he was the answer to their prayers. How could he even begin to explain what had happened to him, what he had felt when he touched the device? It was beyond his understanding, let alone theirs. "I found something," Jonas began, his voice uncertain but steady. "A device. It's not like anything I've ever seen before. It's old. Older than anything we know." I think it's a relic from an ancient civilization, something that existed long before the Xyrath Empire. And when I touched it, something changed inside me. I don't know how to explain it, but I can feel this power inside me now. I think it's the key to defeating the Empire. The officers exchanged skeptical glances, but Eva didn't falter. She stepped closer to Jonas, her expression serious. You expect me to believe that this artifact, this relic, has the power to turn the tide of a war that's been raging for centuries? She asked, her voice low and challenging. You've seen the Empire's weapons, their technology. How can a piece of old junk possibly compare? Jonas felt a pang of doubt, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. I don't have all the answers, General, but I know that this power is real. I felt it.
The visions I saw, they weren't just hallucinations. I saw things.
Technologies that shouldn't be possible. The Empire's weapons, their ships, they're nothing compared to what this device can unlock. Eva paused, her eyes narrowing as she considered his words. She was silent for a long moment before nodding. All right, she said, her voice calm but firm. We'll give it a shot. But understand this, Jonas. We can't afford to waste time. If this device really does hold the key to stopping the Xyrath Empire, then we need to act fast. The Alliance is depending on us. Jonas nodded, his heart racing. He had no idea what he was about to face, but he knew that this was his chance. The weight of the galaxy seemed to hang on his shoulders, but he couldn't afford to hesitate. Not now. The room sprang into action as Eva gave orders to prepare the resistance for their next move. The officers dispersed, each one focused on their task. Jonas was left standing in the middle of the command center, feeling the energy within him hum with an intensity that he could no longer ignore. It was as if the device had become a part of him, and he could feel its power deep inside his chest. The question now was, how could he use it? Eva walked over to him, her expression softer now. Come with me, she said. We'll figure this out together. She led him down a series of narrow hallways, away from the command center, and into a more secure room. Inside, there was a large holographic map of Terra and the surrounding star systems. A table stood in the center, surrounded by various technological devices. Eva gestured for Jonas to sit. All right, she said, sitting down across from him. Let's start from the beginning. You said the device is some kind of ancient relic. What does that mean? Where did you find it? Jonas took a deep breath, his mind still trying to make sense of everything. He explained how he had stumbled upon the device in the underground bunker, and how it had changed him the moment he touched it. He described the visions, the stars, the ancient technologies, and the overwhelming sense of power that had rushed through him. Eva listened carefully, her face thoughtful. So you think this device was created by an ancient civilization? One that predated the Xyrath Empire. I do, Jonas replied. I think it's part of something bigger, something the Xyrath Empire has never encountered. This civilization, whatever it was, they had technologies that could rival anything the Empire has. Eva leaned back in her chair, her eyes scanning the holographic map before her. And you believe this power can be used against the Empire? Jonas nodded. I have to believe that. It's the only chance we've got. For a long moment, Eva didn't say anything. She studied the map, her fingers tapping lightly on the table as she considered their options. Finally, she looked up at Jonas. If we're going to make this work, she said, her voice steady, we need to get our hands on more information. If the Xyrath Empire has been hiding something this powerful for centuries, we need to know everything we can about it. We need to find out where the device came from and why it was hidden. Jonas's mind raced. If there was one thing he knew for certain, it was that the Xyrath Empire would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. They had built their empire on fear and control, and they would do whatever it took to keep their power intact. But if there was a way to use this ancient technology, it could turn the tide of the war.
We'll need to find the source of this device, Eva continued. We'll need to gather our forces, go to the heart of the Empire, and take the fight to them. We can't afford to sit back any longer. The longer we wait, the stronger they become.
Jonas nodded, feeling a sense of resolve settle in his chest. This was it. There was no turning back. The power that had been awakened within him was real, and now it was time to use it. He had to believe that they could win. He had to believe that the galaxy still had a chance. The path ahead was unclear, but Jonas knew one thing for certain. He would do whatever it took to stop the Zyrith Empire, even if it meant sacrificing everything. The war was far from over, but with the power of the ancient device at his side, there was a glimmer of hope. And for the first time since the attack on Terra, Jonas felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The quiet hum of the resistance base filled the air as Jonas sat alone in a small room, his thoughts racing. He had never imagined he would be thrust into a war, much less be the key to ending it. The strange device, the ancient power that now surged within him, had become an inseparable part of his life. The weight of it was heavy, but the responsibility was even greater. The war wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy. Jonas couldn't help but feel the growing pressure, the people who were counting on him, the resistance that had placed its trust in him. It was all on his shoulders now. And yet, despite all the uncertainty, despite not fully understanding the power he possessed, he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't back down. Not now. Outside, the sounds of preparation echoed through the base. The resistance was getting ready to move out. The time for planning and waiting had passed. The Zyrith Empire was advancing faster than anyone had expected, and soon it would be too late to stop them. Jonas had spent the last few days training with General Eva Collins and the other officers, learning how to control the power that had awakened within him. It wasn't easy. Every time he thought he had it figured out, the power would shift, become unpredictable, almost as if it had a mind of its own. But there were moments, brief flashes, when he could feel it, when he could control it. Eva had been relentless in her training, pushing him to understand not just the power within him, but how it could be used. He had learned to manipulate energy fields, control technology, and even bend the laws of physics to his will. But there was still so much he didn't know, so much that terrified him. What if the power grew too strong? What if it consumed him? Jonas had shared his fears with Eva, and she had listened, her expression unreadable, but she had never once shown doubt. "The galaxy's survival depends on you, Jonas," she had said. "We all have our part to play. This power, it's not a curse. It's a weapon, and weapons can save lives. But only if you control them." It was easier said than done. Jonas stood up and walked toward the window. The night sky was clear, the stars shining brightly above. For a brief moment, it almost felt like things could be normal again. Like the war wasn't real. But he knew that wasn't the case. Not anymore. The Zyrith Empire was closer than ever. They had taken too many worlds, and Terra was next on their list. Jonas could feel the urgency in the air. They didn't have much time. A soft knock at the door pulled him out of his thoughts. He turned around as the door creaked open, and General Collins stepped inside. Her expression was as serious as ever, but there was something in her eyes, a hint of concern. "Jonas," she began, her voice calm but firm. "It's time." Jonas nodded, his heart racing. This was it, the final push. The Resistance was about to launch a full-scale attack on the Zyrith Empire. They would strike at the heart of the Empire, in the capital city of Zethar. The risk was enormous. If they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. But if they succeeded, it could be the beginning of the end for the Zyrith Empire. Eva didn't waste time with pleasantries. She handed Jonas a small device similar to the one he had found in the bunker. "This," she said, "is a tracking beacon. It will guide us to the core of the Empire. It's hidden, But once we get close, it will lead us to the heart of their power. We need to be prepared for anything. The Xyrith will not go down without a fight. Jonas took the device, feeling its weight in his hand. The familiar hum from the relic pulsed through him. He could feel the power again, just beneath the surface. He didn't fully understand it, but he could feel its presence. It was there, waiting for him to tap into it. But the question was, would he be able to control it in time? Eva studied him for a moment, her eyes sharp. "You're ready for this?" "I know it. We all do." Jonas wasn't so sure. The stakes had never been higher. The entire galaxy was depending on them. On him. "Let's do this," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Together, they left the room and made their way to the heart of the base. The soldiers were already preparing, loading their weapons and gathering supplies. The air was thick with anticipation. Jonas could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, but he pushed it aside. There was no room for fear now, no time for doubt. General Collins addressed the troops as Jonas stood off to the side. Her voice was calm, but filled with the kind of strength that could inspire an army. "Today," she began, her gaze sweeping over the soldiers, "we fight for our future. For the future of our people. The Xyrith Empire thinks they can crush us. They think they can control the galaxy with fear and power. But we are not afraid.
We are not weak, and today we show them what happens when you push humanity to the edge." The soldiers erupted in cheers, their voices filled with conviction. Jonas felt a surge of something inside him.
It wasn't just the power from the device. It was something deeper, a sense of unity, of purpose. For the first time since the war began, he felt like he was part of something greater than himself. They boarded the ship that would take them to Zethar, the heart of the Xyrith Empire. The journey was long, the ship moving at full speed toward their destination. As they traveled through space, Jonas couldn't help but think about everything that had led him here. He had once been an ordinary engineer, living a quiet life, and now? Now, he was on the front lines of a war that would determine the fate of the galaxy. He wasn't just fighting for Terra anymore. He was fighting for every species that had been oppressed by the Empire. The journey wasn't easy. The closer they got to Zethar, the more dangerous the mission became. The Xyrith Empire's forces were vast, their ships filling the space between the stars. They would not let the resistance reach their capital without a fight. As they approached the outskirts of the Xyrith system, the alarms blared. The ship shook as enemy fire hit the shields. Jonas could feel the tension in the air. The soldiers were ready, but there was still fear. They were facing the might of the Empire, and the odds were stacked against them. Eva stood beside him, her expression hard. "This is it. We make our move now. Everyone on board, prepare for battle!" Jonas felt his heart race as the ship broke through the Xyrith defense perimeter. They were in enemy territory now. He could sense the power of the ancient device stirring inside him, as if it were calling him to action. The time for hesitation was over. This was the moment that would decide everything. The battle was fierce, with enemy ships surrounding them from all sides. But Jonas felt something deep within him, something that connected him to the device and to the energy of the stars themselves. He could feel the energy fields shifting, the forces of nature bending to his will. It was overwhelming, but at the same time, it felt like he was finally in control. With a surge of power, Jonas focused his mind and extended his will. The energy around him twisted, forming a protective shield around the ship. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to hold off the incoming fire. He could hear the soldiers cheering as the ship made its way through the Xyrith defenses. As they approached the capital city of Zethar, Jonas knew they were getting closer to the heart of the Empire. The final battle awaited them. But for the first time, he didn't feel fear. He felt ready. He knew they had a chance, maybe even a real chance, of winning. And with that, the fate of the galaxy rested in their hands.